It went down by Annaliffe, me love and I did stray, wherein the good old slushy mud the seagulls fought and played. We got the whip of a ray and chips, and Mary softly sighed, and John, won't you come for a 1 and 1 down by the Liffey side? Then off to Johnny Fortes, together we did go. The rapture there that filled our hearts, no poet e'er could know. We filled ourselves with 1 and 1s, and Mary sobbed and cried, I'd live forever, eating chips down by the Liffey side. Then up along the Phoenix Park, the loving pair to view, while Mary swanked it like a queen in a skirt of a navy blue. Her hat was lately tartaned and her blouse was newly dyed, so you couldn't match her round the block down by the Liffey side. On Sunday morning to Mead Street, together we will go, and up to Father Murphy there, we both will make our vow. He'll join our hands in a wedlock bands, and soon we'll be outside for a whole afternoon on our honeymoon down by the Liffey side.
My Dublin begins at the Customs House. And now I think of it, it's the place for beginning. Many a false birth certificate I got there when I was in the IRA. Oh, that's up since my time. The new Liberty Hall. The Irish Citizen Army had their headquarters in the old one. From up here, it's only a long spit to where I was reared. Number 14, Russell Street. This isn't it. The house where I was brought up was pulled down, but there's much the same. That's why they pulled it down. That's what Russell Street's like now. But when I was born on the 9th of February, 1923, number 14 was like this. And by the time Seamus and Brian and Dominic and Carmel had been born to join me half-brothers, Rory, Sean and myself, it was like this. My father, Frank Bean, usually called Stephen, was a house painter. He still is, for the matter of that. As you might say, I followed in his footsteps.
Well, I went to a press conference, and one of the questions I was asked, one of them, how does it feel to be the father of 2 sons, running 2 plays in both parts of London? I said, oh well, it's not actually what I feel about it. Naturally I'm proud of the fact that my 2 sons are running plays in London. But I wonder what the British people think of it. They probably know my family record of, rather anti-English feeling. And as a matter of fact, of course, we've been persecuted by you people for 400 or 700 years, as I've been told. Naturally, I fought against you, and we managed to get rid of your black and tans. And I hope the British people nowadays don't imagine that I sent these 2 boys over here in a spirit of vengeance. Well, we were talking about press conferences, but there's another one I have. There's another public house, Lawler's, of Angel Street. And one of the gentlemen of the press there, he asked me, why did I not produce plays? So I politely told him that I was too busy producing playwrights.
But at the time my mother produced me, Stephen was producing mail bags for the government in Kilmainham jail. My proud father saw me for the first time through these bars. I was 9 days old. And my mother held me up the way he could see what Providence and his darling kits had brought him. He was in Kilmainham, like many another before him, for fighting for his country. It's a museum now, to help the people remember the way they used to treat patriots.
It was in Kilmainham prison the invincibles were hung. Mrs. Kelly, she stood there all in mourning for her son. She threw back her shawl and said to all, though he fills a lime pit grave, my son was no informer, and he died a Fenian blade.
And it was in Kilmainham prison that James Connolly was shot, and Pádraig Pearse, and the rest of the 1916 leaders. They're buried now up in Arbour Hill, under the words of the proclamation they issued to the people. And most of our loyal children that weren't shot ended up behind bars. But before my father was caught, he hid from the Black and Tans in a house like this one in Nelson Street. A house of ill repute, some people called it then. But it's a house of literary repute now, because it's where I happened to set the scene of the hostage. But in the 18th century, Nelson Street was part of the fashionable area, housing the well-got horse Protestants that the middle classes like to call the Anglo-Irish gentry, for it was within the ball of an ass of the very bastion of British rule, Dublin Castle. Here the Lord Lieutenant entertained the said Anglo-Irish gentry above, while the mere Irish, who had the cheek and impudence to challenge British rule, rotted and died down below. Here, even Justice faced the viceregal apartment, turning her back on the poor people of Dublin. But they had a great champion in the one-time Dean of St. Patrick's Cathedral, Jonathan Swift, the author of Gulliver's Travels. And he's buried here, lying, you might say, nice and handy to his work. And to Stella, his muse, if that's what they're calling it now. God's little angels. Our sister Monica used to call us all in St. Agatha's in North William Street. But we said more than our prayers in the slums of North Dublin, and we hated the respectable kids who took dancing and piano lessons while we took anything that wasn't nailed down. The Queen's Theatre used to belong one time to an uncle of mine, P.J. Burke. Great plays they used to put on for the people in those days. PJ would send us free passes and we'd think ourselves great, swanking it among the cash-paying customers. The Abbey Company has been playing here since the old Abbey Theatre was burnt down in July 1951. But after a few technical hitches, the new one's open for business at last. But God love us, poor Dubliners. If it was raining soup, we'd be out with forks. But one thing you must give Dublin credit for. The corporation built lovely garden estates when they were clearing the slums. Although to us in Russell Street, Kimmage was like the next parish to Siberia, and the gardens were only a source of annoyance to men like me father, who'd never before had as much land as would fit in a window box.
Then give me a bit of a chance to talk to the man.
So, in the heel of the reel, he had to be codded into making the perilous journey.
Listen, Stephen. Take it
you'll have no worry now. You'll have another drink with me.
Give us a bucket of it.
You'll be all right, you'll be all right.
Keep down your hands.
And you will, and don't forget, temperature's not in Siberia. You have an old bathroom there in the front and back garden. That's always what you wanted, isn't it?
Well fortified with balls of malt and warnings to watch out for the natives who were said to eat their young and all to that effect. They sent him off.
That's a fine shame. Look now over there.
As the man said, you can get used to anything. Only a bad point. Anyhow, he hasn't needed a compass to find his way home from work for the best part of 30 years now. Go on in. My mother likes company. And she's not the sort that'd pass the time of day without ever asking you had your mouth on you.
I polished me pewter, I tidied me kitchen. Me dresser looked white as the stack in the snow. And now be the winter, me skirt I am stitching, for I'm very neat with a needle to sew. I'm just thinking of when Brandon went to school. He was 5 years old. He went to Sister Monica in North William Street. And I thought he got a bit bold at home. And I went down to her one morning, and she met me in the hall in North William Street. And I said, Sister, I have come down to tell you that Brandon is getting very bold. So she says to me, Mrs. Bean, are you aware you're rearing a genius, a brilliant boy, and I hope to live to see him go through university. And another thing, she says to me, I want to ask you, why did you go and cut off his curls? Well, I said, sister, curls here or genuses there, all I want of you is to try and make him a better boy.
Behind my mother's back, people said she didn't succeed. I was too big for me boots altogether. And too big for me boots in those days meant a trip to the market. Just across the road from Moore Street Market is the Rotunda, which of course got its name from its round room. But as the man said, it's the right name to be putting on a maternity hospital. But that's what the Rotunda is. For all, it's a cinema and a theatre on the one block, where fathers-to-be can while away the time if they haven't two legs on them to take them across the road to Mooney's. But be that as it may, it was in the Rotunda in November 1963 that my wife, Beatrice, bore me a daughter, Blanage. Beatrice is a painter, but a different class of a painter from my father or myself.
People often asked us why we came to live in this area. Brendan came from the north side, as you know, and they often ask what brought him to this snobbish area. Well, the flat we originally lived in was a lovely flat, but it was full of dry rot, and they started pulling the whole thing to pieces. So I went out looking for flats, and every time we just were promised a flat, the next thing, when the signing came, they say, oh, Brendan B, and oh no, we couldn't have him. So, well, they didn't say it quite like that, but we never got a flat. So I said, look, I'm fed up looking for flats. I said, let's get a house. So at the time, house property was low, and we got this house. And when we were living here, people often said, Brendan B, and sure, you're a north sider, what are you doing over in this snobbish area? So he'd say, oh, well, sure, I only came here to annoy the neighbours.
That's for those that say that I'm no oil painting.
Oh, look there. Say, who's in that?
Dada.
And who else?
Dada.
No, who else is in it? What's that there?
That's a pussy.
Yeah. Do you like animals, Pie? Would you like to go to the zoo, Pie, and see the animals?
I brought me mutt up to the zoo for to show her the lions and the kangaroo. There was females and she-males of every hue up in the zoological garden.
you see, all Dublin songs aren't of war and slaughter, Doran's ass and barrels of porter. They're talking of barrels of porter, and there's only one thing better than that, and that's drinking them. That's where the stuff is made. Guinness's Brewery. The Guinness family have always been very good to the people of Dublin. Well, then the people of Dublin are very good to the Guinnesses.
I get you for me. I had a son who went over past Janet. But it's like everything else. He thought he was doing better there. So we advised him.
May the given hand never falter.
Took it all in. And so come back here, so he get a job here, so he went to corporation. And he wouldn't listen to me. He wouldn't listen to me.
He went to away.
He wouldn't listen to me.
When he come back. Well, tell us now how much he actually made now while he was in England.
That's Gill's pub on the corner of Russell Street and the North Circular Road.
He never told me them things. Never told me.
Well, was he in the British Army at the time?
The Hair Oil Boys was called that.
The British Green Boys.
The Hair Oil Boys, yeah.
We should do a shot in Johnny right?
Has she got a little flooded the water in my mum that she didn't care for it past Monday. She didn't live up in America.
She didn't get it for Monday, she got it for Wednesday.
My granny, Christine English, who owned our house and the tree next to it, used to send us here with a jug for a pint of porter, or the message, as drink taken off the premises is called around our parts, to show the speaker is a step above buttermilk. However, I got so smart at going for messages that soon I was doing errands for the drovers in the cattle market, further on up the North Circular Road.
I won't take it, Joe. I won't give it to you, Joe. No.
You won't?
No.
No, let's see another day then.
Not nowadays, no. No. But here, here, hold the hand up.
No.
I won't.
Here. I'm giving you £75 for the car. You won't take it. Well, here, I'll tell you what I will do. I'll give you one extra. Yes or no?
No. Nothing doing.
No. Go on, give it to him.
All right, if you can't do it, then I won't stay here all day either.
Here, I wasn't long learning how buyers and dealers can double their money without ever handling a beast, only buying up a farmer cheap and selling to a foreign buyer dear. Small wonder the women going into the butchers are paying for the meat the way it'd be as cheap for them to be eating gold. But every cripple has his way of walking, and I've done the odd stroke myself when the readies were scarce. Not being game for anything, bottle or draught. And I've done the odd stretch too, in Walton Jail in Liverpool and in Strange Ways in Manchester. But there's no need for the national inferiority complex when it comes to jails. You can do as good a stretch as any in Mountjoy, here in Old Dublin, by the banks of the Royal Canal.
A hungry feeling came over me, stealing. All the mice were squealing in my prison cell, and that old triangle went jingle jangle all along the banks of the Royal Canal. To begin the morning, the screw was bawling, "Get up, ye bowsy, and clean up your cell." and the old triangle went jingle jangle all along the banks of the Royal Canal.
Another emigrant for Paddington, or some other built-up bog in London.
That's great! Send the pound!
The queer old world, when you think about it. But as the man said, it's the best we have to be going on with.